We've got number 19 Miami, 2.5 point favorites. They storm into the Swamp to play Florida Saturday at 2:30 on ABC. Guys, the biggest question for me is going to be who wins the battle up front. Last year, we talked about Tennessee going into Florida, and Tennessee had still all of this hype. I think Joe Milton hadn't fully been exposed, at least not to the nation as a whole, that he was, a rock of an arm, but didn't always know where it was going. And Tennessee had playoff aspirations. We all said, hold on, pause. The Florida Gators are much better at the Swamp than they are away from home. And no matter how bad they look when they go on the road, think Kentucky last year, there's just something in those waters down in Gainesville where all of a sudden the Gators come to play, and it's like a Jekyll and Hyde situation. And I'm wondering if that's what we're going to get this year. Florida allowed only 17 points a game last year at home versus 37 points per game on the road. New team, new season. I get all of that. But that is a trend that someone's going to have to show me isn't true before I don't take any stock in it. And so for me, I'm looking at the trenches. Florida is as talented as any team in the country up front. That I think is what's going to be the most impressive battle to watch with the Canes on Saturday afternoon.
I think for me, the battle I'm most looking forward to is what coach finds a way to help his team to win, or maybe avoids finding a way to help his team lose. Again, I feel like I'm just taking the low hanging fruit storylines, but it's the hot seat bowl, and I'm super excited for this game. I think other than A&M Notre Dame for personal reasons, this is the game I'm most excited about this week because of all the implications and all the fallout that are going to happen for the losing program. I'm here for the toxicity. I'm here for all of that. I Who do you guys think is the better overall team? Just like home field aside, I lean Miami. And I lean Miami because I think I believe in Cam Ward more than I believe in Graham Mertz. I think I believe in who Cam Ward is going to throw the ball to more than Graham Mertz. And I just, again, see it to believe it. A lot of those stats, Mitch, that 17 points a game, a lot of that was against just really poor competition. You mentioned them shutting down Tennessee, which was the performance of the year last year for the Florida defense. But a lot of those big performances at home were against poor competition, lower level offenses. I think Miami's going to come in there with a revamped offense, a revamped, retooled, new, invigorated offense. Didn't even mention Damian Martinez at the running back position. To me, they're the better team on paper, but there is the magic of the Swamp to account for.
Yeah, Trey, I don't think you're far off on that. I think Miami is the better team, and I don't think it's necessarily as close. Now, rivalry game, so you can't just say a talented team is the auto winner, right? That's sometimes rivalry games are wonky and crazy, and then weird stuff happens. But I think when you look at it, I trust what I know of Cam Ward more than I trust what I know of Graham Mertz. I think Graham Mertz is reliable, consistent, not necessarily dynamic. But I do think that Cam Ward can really sling it when he needs to. And I think that's it could end up turning into problems for him. He could end up turning the ball over. But I think there's probably going to be more big plays to be had than turnovers on this one. And really, when I look at this whole thing, I do think that studs have to matter. And I think that Miami just has more studs than Florida has. Like, I think Damian Martinez makes up for the fact that I think Florida probably has the better running back room, but Damian Martinez is worth more as the one player. I think when he's out on the field, he can do more than, what any of those, running backs can, rotating in and out if they're fresh, if whatever. I just think he has the ability to make the big plays. And, you got guys like Xavier Restrepo out there to throw to. I just really trust what I know about Miami. And, when it comes down to it, you're kind of right about the whole, which coach is going to be able to get out of the way, right? At the moment, I feel like we don't really know which coach can get out of the way because we've seen these coaches go in and mess up games where they shouldn't have messed up. Obviously, Cristobal has the worst flub of the group so far, but I mean, neither of them have really, to my recollection, won their team a game that they shouldn't have just schematically or through coaching, right? It seems like when they win, they're just the better team and they show up better, or there's a series of things that happen, or there's a heroic performance, like what Mitch was saying with the defense, right? Just showing up, shutting down Tennessee, right? That's a heroic performance on that defensive side. I think I trust Miami as the better team. Problem is, Mitch is 100% right that when Florida plays at home, there's just something else about the Swamp. There's something else about when you play there. Teams go in there. We saw
Get
a
the
much
Tom
better.
Petty fired up. You got the flashlights
Exactly.
out.
But like we a couple years ago, we saw a very good Utah team that ended up going on and winning their conference, lose in the Swamp to start the year. So like even if we're going to say that Miami could be a conference champion contender in the ACC, that still doesn't mean that they will escape the Swamp. So it's a really interesting matchup. I think I trust what Miami is more. I think if you play this on a neutral field, I'd take Miami, 7 or 8 times out of 10, but at the Swamp it's a lot closer.
The one thing I'll say to counter the Miami hype, do we know that Miami is better? I know they've got better pieces, but do we know that Miami football is better than the Florida Gators? That's because of all the things that you just said. We haven't seen that talent result in 9, 10, 11 wins. I mean, Miami's been the more talented team on the field for decades, right? Really since their dynastic run in the 90s and early 2000s. Most of the time, Miami is the more talented team on that football field, and yet
Modern Miami, to your point, is never greater than the sum of its parts.
it's not. It really isn't.
Yeah, that's the biggest concern for Miami is have they figured out a way to be greater than the sum of their parts? And if you believe that Mario Cristobal is a decent coach, then maybe he can find a way to do that. But I think that's the problem in this game, right? And that's why I'm in wait and see mode with all of the big three in the ACC. And I'll confess, as one of the co-presidents of the Cam Ward fan club from a couple years ago, I'm concerned about him against an SEC defense. We haven't really seen that. We saw when he jumped from the FCS to the FBS at Washington State, there was a learning curve, right? He's jumping from Pac-12 football. Shout out to my article on Substack. He's going to face an more talented defense on average in the ACC, and especially this week against Florida than most of what he faced in the Pac-12. There's a learning curve there. I'm a little concerned about that and how quickly he'll adjust to that speed on the other sideline.
Well, Cam Ward last year at Washington State, 66% completion, 3,700 yards, 25 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So you look at those numbers, you're really excited about what you're getting there down in Coral Gables. But like you said, does that immediately translate week one? Guys, let's move to our picks. And I think I've forecasted my pick. We might have all forecasted our picks here. I'm going to roll with Florida plus the 2.5. They are my underdog of the week. In our ledger segment every single week, or our ledger graphic, I should say, we'll put a lock of the week, an underdog of the week, and a outright upset of the week. So Florida is reserving category 2 there for me. I need to see it to believe it with Miami. I think that's where I just net out here. I know that Miami upgraded the roster significantly, but did that coaching staff upgrade it significantly? There were a number of flaws in their coaching style and in their game plans last year that tangibly cost their team games. If they haven't improved on the back end like they have on the field with the players themselves, then there's no reason for me to believe that Miami can go into the Swamp and win this. So, I'll be the last one on the bandwagon for Miami, and that's fine. If Miami, just kicks the snot out of Florida this weekend, congratulations. Miami is finally operating on the level that I think we've been waiting for them to get to, for, like I said, decades. But until I see that, give me the Gators at home.
I'm going to break my rule of waiting and seeing on the top 3 of the ACC with this pick only. Not to be confused with being on the Miami bandwagon. Please don't hear what I'm not saying there. But I feel like I'm going to pick less for Miami and more against Florida in this game. Even with Miami struggling to live up to the sum of its parts, I feel like whatever sum they can come up with will be higher than the sum of what Florida can come up with at this moment in time. I need to more see it to believe it with Florida. There's a lot of pressure in that locker room. They released a heck of a hype video surrounding that pressure the other day on their Twitter account, but it's one thing to say it on social media, it's another thing to prove it on the field. So I'm leaning Miami in this one. I think they cover. I think it's an extremely close game. I think they win by 3 to 5 points.
Yeah, I think this will be close as well. I'm going to kind of try to help make your point a little bit on breaking your rule, Trey. I think unlike Florida State, which we saw on display last week, and we talked about, they didn't make good, moves in the portal for them. It wasn't a good fit. For whatever reason, DJU wasn't a good fit compared to what Jordan Travis was, and Roydell Williams wasn't a good fit compared to what they had left. That is not true for Miami. I think they made really good moves in the portal that fits what they want to do. I think that clearly, I think they got the better quarterback out of the Pac-12, or the former Pac-12, I suppose. And I think that, being able to grab Damian Martinez, I think Damian Martinez is the difference maker in this game. I think he has one or two extra kind of big plays, hits the edge, finds some space. I think he's got a couple of those in there, and I just think the star power is going to end up winning out for Miami right now. I get what you're saying, that they don't typically, find a way to become more than the sum of their parts, but they got some dang good parts this year. And so I think that that's kind of where you can say, hey, Miami, you may not overachieve. You may not, find your way to 10 wins, but I think you're going to win this one. And I don't think it's going to be super, super comfortable. I think there's going to be some dogfighting here, and I think it's going to be a tough game. But I think Miami comes out on top by, 4 to 7, something like that.
Gracious, how about